Welcome everybody to our member quarterly. We do this 3 times a year. The fourth quarter, I guess, is our quarter off, but 3 times a year where folks who have done something interesting and done it well that relates to the AAQEP standards, come and share with the rest of us, because one of AAQEP's ideas is that we will continue to share and learn from each other as broadly as we can. So caring for completers is today's topic. Of course, Christine, I managed to have lost the right screen. I'm looking at, there we go. Now I've got your version of the slides up. Starting just with this really quick welcome, and so glad so many could join us. Then we'll introduce our colleagues who are doing the presentation. I'll say just 2 words to frame the topic, and then we'll hear from Susan Fowler at Southern Oregon University and from Amy Holcombe from High Point University. So, and then end with a few questions. So here we go. And since I already said who they are and where they're from, I think once each of you start, please do give a little introduction. Susan, it was great seeing you at the Institute not long ago, and Amy as a board member as well as general member of AAQEP, so glad to have you here. I think the only thing I want to say to frame today's topic about completer support is this. As AAQEP was launched, we were launched into an environment where there was a whole new attention across higher education, but especially in educator preparation, on understanding what happened to our completers, what became of them. And often with the view in mind of taking some of that information and bringing it as part of the accountability package with our organizations. As we set up the AAQEP standards, we included very intentionally in a couple of different ways attention to what happens with completers. Sorry, I'm reaching for my sheet so I get the aspect number right. At one level, this is mostly about aspect 4C, which is supporting completers' entry into a continuation of their professional role. But one of the things that we found so far through the years in our AAQEP reviews is that this way of engaging with completers actually pays all kinds of wonderful dividends, for our programs, for our relationships all over. So I won't say any more than that, except to say this has been one of the most fun things to watch as AAQEP members have engaged and shared with each other about the ways that they provide support to completers and the ways that enriches things for everybody. So with that, I'm going to mute myself and get out of the way, and we can go ahead and start. So
great. And Susan, before you hop on here, we'll get your slides started. I just want to say to our folks here with us, please feel free to use the chat box to collect questions. There'll be an opportunity after we hear from both our amazing presenters today where they can address those, as well as you can just unmute at that point when we have our Q&A session, and you can ask those questions as well. So Susan, I'm going to move us right along to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. It's interesting when you were framing it, Mark, because, I had this moment of panic because I realized, there's this perspective. And I guess where I approached my presentation preparation was, it wasn't that on June 17th, they crossed the stage, I hand them their diploma and I kick them out the door, and then I start supporting them. I really think that what happens is it begins during that final year. So that's kind of where I approached it. But there's lots of crossover, and I'll talk about that. So one of the things that we've done for many years is our alumni mentor night. And what we usually do is invite a couple of dozen of our alumni. And I think that in and of itself is a support. It keeps us connected. It keeps us honoring them. We are inviting them back to share because we think so highly of them. And it's a lovely evening. We bring in all of our pre-service teachers at that time. We have a nice dinner, not really fancy. Usually it's pizza, but it just kind of breaks the tension. We have a mentor at each round table. We just sort of start the evening off a little social. And then there's usually someone on the mic, and that has been me in many years, just because I'm a little bit of a Phil Donahue. If any of you have been around long enough to remember Phil Donahue and how he would run the room. And I just love doing that. And so again, there's laughter. The alumni are warned ahead of time. that part of the evening is we invite them to come up and share golden nuggets. And they don't have to, it's not forced, but we want them to know ahead of time if they would like to share some advice or just a really good story. And most of them come up to the front and then they pass the mic and they laugh with each other because they know each other from either our program or from their field. Again, very comfortable part of the evening. And then we move it back to really what's the main point of the evening, which is to give our pre-service teachers a chance to do some mock interviews. And so hopefully by having a half hour of that lighthearted time, then when they sit down for the mock interviews, people have a little bit of trust. And I think that's really important for really helping prepare them for the real interviews and the transition into having professional conversations. In the past, we've also had a paper bag on every table with little slips of paper inside that are scenarios. And so a person would pick out a scenario, they read it, and then they have to actually say how they would deal with it. That's been very popular and also just very authentic. So it's been a great evening in general. So we can go to the next slide. The results. That's okay. One of the things that our alumni are so well received. And so our pre-service teachers are just so grateful to them for coming. And so that's been great. They always want more time. And it's been hit and miss over the years. The biggest thing I took away was that some of our pre-service teachers did still feel unprepared for the mock interview. They might have felt comfortable with their table and their alumni person, but they didn't feel comfortable ready for the mock interview. So that's something that we're taking away based on our self-study, is that we need to build in some mock interviews in a different setting so that they feel better prepared. One thing I wanted to point out was that during the COVID years, we didn't want to give up on this. So we had to go virtual, and there were actually some benefits to that. We have distance students. They were able to participate for the first time in this larger event. The alumni also made comments about the virtual interviewing, in that it prepared the pre-service teacher for the reality today, where many districts are doing interviews via Zoom. So that was helpful for them. So we had positives and negatives, and we're learning from that. Next slide. One of the things we've done over the years is our educator job fair. This has been a strong component of our program for all of the 15 years that I've been there. It's been a great way for our candidates and our district partners to work together. It also has been open to working teachers, some of whom have been our alumni and some are not, but we open it to the whole community. So it truly is an educator job fair. And, you know, the state of Oregon is quite big, and Portland has this huge job fair, but that's the very top of the state. So for us to have a job fair down at the very southern part of the state, I think has been, again, a very supportive way of serving current pre-service teachers as well as our professional alum. The one thing that we try to do is to really prepare our pre-service teachers by helping them with writing their resumes, their cover letters, identifying a big spreadsheet about, you know, job searches in all the different districts around. And then one of the things that we started doing in recent years was we pulled the resumes in early, made digital resume books that we pushed out to our partners. And so that way they could be seeing, oh, this person looks interesting. And they could connect with that pre-service teacher and arrange for an on-the-spot interview at the job fair. So it's just made it a little bit more hip, a little bit more current in the use of the job fair, instead of it being cattle call, you know, that just feels like, oh my God, I got 10 seconds to sell myself. So the job fair has been really powerful. If we can go to the next slide. So, yeah, COVID again rears its ugly head. We had 2 years of the virtual experience, and again, there were some positives. Our distance students could easily attend. It was a lot less expensive. We didn't even charge our districts, money to come, and they didn't have to expend money. It was interesting because we also opened it up. We had the first hour to an hour and a half where every district had a slide and they had a short presentation. So every district had a chance to be heard. And then we pushed out into the breakout rooms so that the candidates could then go into the breakout room with the district they wanted to talk about. That was cool, except, the negatives were the districts where nobody showed up. And so, there's again, the positives and the negatives. We are going back to an in-person, but we are trying to think about how do we match this up to really benefit all parties. And so we're looking at having it on a Friday afternoon, matched with a Saturday, what we call Raider Educator Day. And I'll talk about that a little bit too. But we're thinking about that back-to-back feeling of it really being, bringing them into their world, and also then supporting them in those first few years, especially. So let's go to the next slide and talk about our Raider Educator Day. We had our first one last year. We want to create an event that has several purposes here. So we want to support our graduating candidates and our alumni. So we have that perspective, but we also want it to be a recruiting tool. And so what we've been thinking about doing or what we did last year, is we actually have sort of concurrent sessions, kind of like the Salt Lake City event where you had 3 strands and you chose your strand. We like this idea of being able to have a keynote, and we had a wonderful keynote this last year who we picked her because she was one of our alum, but she also has really demonstrated in her career that you can write your own story. You can carve your own path. You can advocate for what you believe in as an educator. And so we really wanted her to speak to that. And so everybody participated in our keynote, and then they went into their different sessions based on whether they were a current teacher, a graduating pre-service teacher. They were together, and we brought in some wonderful alumni and also some district leaders to speak to that. And I'll show you that agenda in a moment. And then we had our prospective students, and that went all the way to high school students, and then young college students, and then also people in the community, perhaps educational assistants. So let's go to the next slide, just to kind of share with you for our current candidates and our current practicing teachers and our alumni. We've kind of based our workshops around questions. So how do I make the most of my career? How can I make my first year my best year? How can I make connection to each student in my classroom? And then we pulled in our experts from the field to speak to these questions. Again, very positive results on that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And for our prospective students, what are the best pathways? How can I afford it? What qualities and experience are districts looking for? And then this was my favorite: is the teaching profession alive and well? And we brought in 2 really powerful speakers, including the superintendent of the biggest district in Southern Oregon. And, just his last name is Champion. I always say he is a champion for education. So that was very wonderful for us to be able to have that kind of partnership. Okay, next slide. So one of the things that we're doing to support all educators, this is international, but it's being held at our campus. This is the Holistic Teaching and Learning Conference. We have held it for a couple of different years. COVID got in the way, but we still tried to do it virtually, but we are back in person this year, April 18th to the 21st. You're all welcome to come. But it is a wonderful opportunity for us to provide for the full education community. And our holistic teaching and learning center is very, very active. And we're really excited to be able to have that be sort of that's kind of a highlight spotlight on our program, is our work around holistic teaching. And the next slide. Generally, what I would say is we try to have a lot of different smaller workshops and things. And so one of the examples of probably about 20 to 25 times a year on different Saturdays, we have these Saturday workshops. And these are open again to the entire community of educators. And many times they do have a focus on early childhood, but it's really expanding quite a bit. But the topics are really fantastic, again, taught by really real solid experts in the field. And just an amazing array of topics, from rooted in relationship to restorative justice, PSYOP. It just keeps going. And so I think, you know, we have a few other innovations underway that have to do with really trying to use our alumni and developing focus groups. And one of the things I'd love to figure out how to do is to see if I could have some kind of a long-term, bless you, small group where I could follow those same teachers for like 5 years and go in and do observations in the field. And, you know, but that's a big project. And I'm right now I'm thinking about how do I do that in partnership with our local mentor teacher program. So they already have mentors that the state provides funding for. And so is there a way I can work with the mentors at the same time and maybe follow these new teachers? So that's something I'm thinking about. But that's what I have for you today.
Thank you so much, Susan, for sharing all of that. So now folks, you have time to percolate and think about your questions and how you might want to explore some of the opportunities that Susan offers, not only her her candidates, but also completers, and creating that nice pathway. I loved how you opened up with that explanation, Susan. So now we're going to turn things over to Amy and High Point University. So Amy, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much. My name's Amy Holcombe, and I currently serve as the Dean of the Stout School of Education. And I just have to take a point of privilege here to say that when I looked through the guest list or the participant list, it's wonderful because I feel like we're such a community here at AAQEP. Susan was one of our cohort partners. We were in a subgroup together as we were preparing to apply for accreditation. And Brian, who conducted our site visit, led our site visit, is here. And it's one of the things that I just love the most about AAQEP, that, you know, Christine's here, Mark's here, Karen's here. This is such a supportive community. And I loved being asked to share some of our ideas and some of what we're doing. And as I prepped it, I realized, Brian, that most of what's in here that I'm presenting today, I didn't even put in our report. So lesson learned, you know, after you go through it, you always go, oh, well, now I know how to do the report. I should have put those things in there. But we have programs at 3 different levels, at the teacher preparation, principal, and superintendent preparation. So I thought I would just share a little bit about what we do at each of those levels, and then round out by telling you about general supports that we offer to all graduates. So the first slide is teacher preparation supports. 2 of the things that we offer that I think are real standouts are resource labs and training. And what we have done in the Stout School of Education is we've taken 4 of our classrooms and we transitioned them from a typical university classroom into learning labs that look like K-12 classrooms, that are outfitted with the supplies, the furniture, the software, all the things that you would see in a traditional classroom. So we have one for STEM, we have one for math, we have one for special education, and for literacy. And within each of those, you can see some of the sample items that we offer. And what we do is we offer a whole series of workshops, much like what Susan and her team do at Southern Oregon University. And we open them up to not only our current students, but our graduates. So we say, even though you've graduated, we're not done with you. This is always home. You can always come back for more learning. And we offer these workshops during times when our practicing teachers can finish out their school day, then return back to the university to come and engage in a professional development experience. So what we did when we outfitted these labs is we used some donor funds, we used some grant funds, and we used some of our instructional supply budget over the years to build these labs up. And it's a great investment because not only can current students benefit from it, but the graduates continue to come back. And so we're getting multiple uses for our dollars here through this strategy. We also pay for mentor training. So this is not something that we do on site, but we go into our partner districts, and we have about 18 of them that we place most of our students with here in North Carolina. And we pay for the New Teacher Center to provide mentor training to practicing teachers out in the field who qualify to be mentors. They have a sufficient number of years of experience, strong evaluations, recommendations from their principals, because we want to ensure that no matter where our students are placed, the mentors that support them have a similar approach so that we can align our coaching approach, our university supervisor approach, with the same approach that the mentors will take when they provide coaching on site. So our partners out in the field love that we provide that training and support to mentors, because unfortunately, the state of North Carolina cut funding for mentor training and mentor pay. So now it's kind of left to the universities to pick that up. So that's another service that we offer to support our teachers once they're out there in their own classrooms. Now our principals look a little bit different. The supports that we provide to sustain our principal candidates. Christine saying,
Amy, did you want me to advance a slide? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so I think you've gotten through here, and let me move on to principal.
Oh, look, I forgot about that slide.
Go
Okay,
back to that then.
the other, I thought I just had one slide per group. So one of the other things that we do is we engage national speakers. So Dinah Zeig, if you don't know about her, you're missing a treat. She is down in Comfort, Texas, and she is the foldables lady. So she's the original hamburger hot dog fold lady. And we brought her and her team in to do a workshop this past year with our students, teaching them how to use basically 3D graphic organizers in their classroom. And then on the right, you see Steve Spangler, who's the Mentos and Diet Coke guy. He's actually an educator in residence at High Point University. Huge talent, totally dynamic. I was never home during the day to watch the Ellen show, but he tells me that he was on the Ellen show on a regular basis doing science experiments. Well, he comes here 4 times a year, and we get to have our students work with him. And so we always invite a couple hundred practitioners, graduates from around our region to come and participate in Steve's workshops as well. Anytime we have national speakers, and it's probably 6 to 8 times a year, depending on the year, we always make sure to bring our graduates back to engage with those people as well. So thank you, Christine. Now I understand why it was confusing. I'm talking about principals. You're like, wait, there's another teacher slide. So now on to the principals. We have more graduate students in our program than we have undergraduates. So our principal cohorts are many, and we do use a cohort model for our principals, which is in and of itself a support. But much like what Susan shared with her teachers, we conduct mock interviews with our principal candidates, and we use our graduates as the mock interviewers. So that helps them to develop their own leadership skills by taking on that role of a principal or a superintendent interviewing a potential principal candidate. And so pictured on the left, you see one of our principal graduates who is successfully leading a school within 5 miles of our campus, actually, and one of our principal candidates. So Jennifer came back to serve as an interviewer. And we have guest speakers similar to the teachers that we bring in for our current cohorts, and we always invite our alumni back to participate in those. We offer the use of assessments to our graduates. So those are workplace and personality assessments that help them to understand how they're operating in their current roles. So whether it's a 360 benchmark assessment, the DISC assessment, the Lumina Spark, any of those, we invest in those because we believe that allowing people to engage in those types of assessments once they're 2 and 3 years into the job helps them to be better leaders. Another strategy that we use is GroupMe. This happens to be the technology of choice of the students, not my choice. We set them up in a social group through an app called GroupMe at the beginning of their cohorts. And while they're in school with us, they use it as a way to communicate changes in class locations or schedules or homework or who do I call for this, that, or the other. But what we have found is 10 years later, they're still using that same GroupMe group chat to support each other. And it's absolutely wonderful. We love it because we're in on all the GroupMe chats. And so we get to keep up with our alumni. We know what's going on with them. We can send out announcements. We can send out, hey, we have a teacher graduate that's looking for a second grade position. Do any of you need one? And so we start placing our undergrads with our graduates as well, just by keeping in touch with them by, texting on a GroupMe. So I think that's it for the principals. Our superintendents are a little tougher to support because they're really in executive leadership roles. And so quite often their time is limited, access to them is limited. So our support is a lighter touch with the superintendents, I'll say. We do have a speaker series, and what we do is we engage those leaders and film them. They are our speakers. It's much like a TED Talk. And we have them come back and we film them and record them talking about their areas of expertise. We capture those. They're usually about 10 to 15 minutes. And we publish those on our HPU Plus app so that you have an entire set of videos recorded by people with expertise in human capital management, SEL, DEI, best practices for this, that, and the other. These two graduates that you see here, Eric and Marcus, have a podcast that they do together about race in education. And they talk about their unique relationship. They are best friends. They're graduates of High Point University, and they're both principals in our local school district. And they talk very frankly about racial issues that occur while leading their schools, among students, among teachers, with their parents and community. And so they recorded a speaker series session called Leading in Black and White. But if you go to that library of videos, we have several dozen that are available, and we're continuing to develop those so that superintendents and principals have resources that they can tap into that will always be hosted by their alma mater. So for general supports with everyone, we have our own Stout School of Education job board where we allow or invite rather employers in the region to post vacancies. We do use Handshake at the university, but those jobs tended to be more corporate. They didn't really feel like they were for educators. So we launched our own job board so that all the local school districts post their vacancies there. We push those out to our current students. We have a 100% job placement rate for year after year after year. That doesn't surprise you considering the shortage of educators, I know. We also have an advisory committee membership, and we always put alumni on that committee so that they can help to shape our future practice. As most anyone does who's accredited, we do surveys and focus groups with our alumni. I always offer pro bono workshops. I tell the students when they leave us that they just learned a whole lot at High Point University. And when they try to bring that into their classrooms, into their schools, and into their districts, we're always here to support them. And we're able to support them by offering them workshops. So a lot of our principal and superintendent grads will call and say, you know, Amy, remember that activity you did in the culture class? Will you come and do that with my principals at our summer institute? And the answer is always yes. It gives us the opportunity to push back out into the schools, to promote the university, to support our graduates, to offer great learning experiences to educators out there. And it makes for a very tight relationship between the university and our partner school districts. We offer summer retreats for school leadership teams and district leadership teams to come onto our campus. We're very, very fortunate in that we have a gorgeous campus with beautiful spaces. And so we tell people, bring your leadership team on campus. We will host you at no cost. You can use the space. We will even come and facilitate part of the retreats for you over the summer if you want. And most of them take us up on it. And they like being able to take their teams off-site and come onto the campus. The university does a lot of alumni engagement, reunions, and we have the Career Center that helps with mock interviews and resume development, but quite honestly, we do so much of that in our own School of Education that they probably use us more than they use the HPU Career Center. Finally, I ask all of our faculty to be on at least one board locally so that our presence is felt out in the community and so that we're performing service on boards alongside our alumni. And so our alumni see us in roles in their school districts, in local nonprofit organizations, and our presence is felt. So that support should be felt in the schools, in the districts, and on local boards, and they should be able to call upon us whenever they need us for that support. So it doesn't end at graduation. As Susan said, you don't just hand them that diploma and say, see ya. It's a long-term, lifetime relationship that we have with them. So thank you for the opportunity to share some of that.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm going to stop sharing so we can see everybody and maybe take some questions. I'm not sure if any came up in the chat. I think what struck me about both of your presentations, even though we called this Caring for Completers, you've taken that idea of completer and just pushed it out to the entire field. It's lovely to see how much good work you're doing in terms of supporting all of our education professionals out there in the type of work that you're doing. Mark, get any comments or folks, questions for our two presenters?
Not any, I'm just glancing back through, not any general questions yet. And I apologize if I missed any. Yeah, the floor is open. Patrick, I see your hand.
Hi. Yes, first I want to thank Susan and Amy very much for their presentations. Amy, specifically this GroupMe app, I never heard of it before. I just looked it up. It's free. And I was just wondering how it's being used by the alumni, the current students, and the involvement of the faculty on that. Because we have a true cohort program, and I'd like to utilize that. Could you tell me a little bit about how it's actually being used?
Absolutely. They use it from anything ranging from when does value-added data come back? Do teachers have access to it yet? Can someone explain to me what it means when such and such? Does anyone have access to resources for letters training? Because I need my K-2 teachers trained. They just throw out questions that are on the job, practitioner questions, and they know that their colleagues will have the answers. or they'll know someone who does have the answer. They also will share job opportunities with each other. They'll say, hey, you know, Northern High School is looking for a principal. You know, one of you guys should really apply for that. It would be a great promotion. And so they share anything and everything. That happy birthdays go on that. The first day of school is always fun because everyone posts their pictures of their kids on the first day of school. And I'm looking forward to Halloween coming up because they'll all post pictures of their kiddos in Halloween costumes. So they use it for personal and professional. They just stay in touch with each other like a family. It's so much fun to, sometimes I hear it dinging all night long and I think, Amy, you should not be on all these group meets, but I have fear of missing out. I don't want to miss out to hear about someone's promotion or, you know, an award that they got. So I do stay in touch as well on those.
That's great. I looking at the app, it says that you could possibly set up polls, questions, and people could answer like a poll or a survey. Have you ever done that?
Actually, they did it last week when they were trying to find a date to all get together for drinks after work. So, yet another usage of it. They met last Monday at World of Beer at 6 o'clock and they set it up through a poll that they did on GroupMe.
Very good. Thank you.
I see a couple of questions have come in the chat, and one I think would be, you know, each of you has found a way to support people with an impressive array of services. And so the question came in the chat: where do you secure funding for these events and supports? And maybe not only how do you get it, but how do you keep it going? Who are your supporters, and how does that work?
I'll go ahead and start. You know, I think traditionally we have had a budget, and that budget allowed us to fund things like our Alumni Mentor Night. And in fact, when I first started, we actually had 3 Alumni Mentor Nights, and they had a different focus each time. The first one was perhaps around resume review. Another one might be around the scenarios, another one around mock interviews. We've had to collapse it down, of course. I think generally the educator job fair has been able to break even or even make a little money for us because we can charge the districts. And I would say that sometimes that money can then be used to channel into covering the refreshments per se for Raider Educator Day. Conferences, we do charge for the conference, but for those Saturday workshops, we secured a really beautiful grant that covers those workshops. And so we're able to provide the workshops at no cost to the participants. We pay the presenters, we pay for their travel and their lodging and such. So that grant has helped us with that. In terms of the work around, our alumni, when we ask them to come and present, you know, I'm just so grateful to them because they often say yes, and with no pay. Our education services district has a certain amount of a budget, and so they push out and support. So, you know, we as faculty are expected to, as part of our service to the community, you know, we kind of look at it that way. So I guess my only answer is dedication, and then grants, and being able to get a little bit of money from the job educator fair.
So it looks like a smooth continuum, and it's actually put together with a lot of behind the scenes trade-offs and decisions. Yeah. Amy, how about you? And there's a specific follow-up question for you as well, which was wondering if there's a fee for your program graduates to attend the conference or Saturday workshop. So maybe those two can be folded together, the general support and the question about fees.
Yeah, much like Susan, it's a combination of our faculty offering some of the training pro bono, using donor funds to sponsor some of the events. using grant funds. I'm a prolific grant writer. I'm always out there writing grants for something, and using those funds that are meant for specific programs, but it doesn't say that if you fund a program with grant dollars for this particular purpose, that you can't say, and any unfilled seats can be filled with alumni or local practitioners, as long as you're fulfilling what the grant requires. And so anything that we offer, what we try to do is just open it up to everyone. And anytime there's the opportunity to film a keynote or an event, we try to capture that so that we have it in perpetuity, so that we can put it on HBU Plus and offer that experience to everyone else for free who can just watch it on demand. So it's just a combination. And fees, the other part of the question, no, we've never charged a fee for alumni to attend a conference or Saturday workshop. Not yet.
I'm watching the chat and I'm scanning. So please, if you're just ready to jump in, please do. Otherwise, I'm going to slip a little question in here. And I had one question I wondered for each of you. Amy, when you talked about making these assessments available for folks to assess themselves, I think it was listed on the principles slide. Am I remembering that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, what an interesting thing. So I'm curious, is that just available to the principals? And I wonder if you've seen any of them, you know, how have they made use of that? Have they turned around and moved any of those? Because a lot of the there are many different types of assessments. In fact, we're just working with one internally, the Working Genius assessment, for helping us to understand our own ways of working together and doing team building. So I couldn't help but be curious if you've seen the leaders that you've prepared take those tools and use them more extensively, but also what they've gained from them, and what a neat idea. That was a novelty to me.
Well, I'll tell you where it came from. When I was thinking about redesigning our graduate programs, so those that we have graduate programs for teachers as well, but those targeted at principals and superintendents, I created a framework for that curriculum called ACE. So assessments, coaching, and experiential learning. And I think those are three core elements to making learning very sticky and personalizing that learning. And so I went out and got certified to facilitate numerous assessments and started adding several of our faculty members into those certification programs as funding became available, so that we have a whole team of people who can deliver these assessments. Because of that, it doesn't cost us anything to continue delivering those assessments, because we're certified to do it ourselves. We don't have to pay a consultant. And we have done that for principal and superintendent candidates, and they love it. The more we do it, the more that they eat it up. There's change style indicator, influence style indicator, decision style profile, the 360s. So there's workplace and personality assessments. Now I'm going to have to get certified in Working Genius or whatever. That's another one I didn't know about. And the feedback that we have received is that they love knowing themselves better. They work whatever their assessment is into their conversations. You'll hear them talking about it. They'll say, oh, well, I'm a D. That's why I reacted that way. I need to be more sensitive when you're talking about your ideas. And I need to be a better listener. I know that about myself. I should have caught myself. And so they bring that awareness forward into their conversations and into their leadership work, I think. And then when our coaches go out and work with them, if they are aware of the assessment results, if the candidates share that with them, then the coaching supports the application of the learning and integrates it with the assessment results. And then all of our classes heavily emphasize experiential learning. We use a lot of simulations. We use a lot of tools from a company called RSVP Designs in the UK. anytime I have extra funds, I'm buying more and more of their tools, because it's through giving people a common touchstone experience and debriefing that they get those leadership lessons that are transferable into their personal lives, into their work lives, and it gives them an experience that they never forget. I mean, I still see people who I'll run into and they'll say, "Oh my God, you don't have those rings with you, do you?" And what they're talking about is this exercise that we did in one of the classes that stuck with them. It made us such an emotional mark that they'll remember it forever, but it was a tough conversation that followed. So it imprinted on them. My goal is to make what they learn with us as sticky as possible. And I think assessments helps to just secure that when you combine that with the coaching and the experiential learning. And so it's just a different approach. And I think it comes from the fact that I retired from K-12. I wasn't higher ed my entire career. And a lot of what I did in K-12 was talent development. And so I've brought a lot of that into my work here as a dean.
Fantastic. What an interesting set of things, a great resource to be able to promote. And by the way, I can't resist saying what great examples all through both of these about collaborative ongoing professional development. So there's tons of good standard 2 stuff. Sorry, I'm an accreditor, so I think in those terms it has to, I can never set it aside. Susan, and again, I'm scanning to see, I don't want to jump ahead of others that have questions, but and this might be a question for both of you, but I'll pose it to you first, Susan. I was so impressed by the fact that in your presentation about caring for completers, we got all the way back to prospective students coming in and being part, right? So that whole spanning the spanning the continuum and building that ongoing engagement and support. I'm just curious if through all of these interactions have program changes resulted, because as you're in the middle of all this communication with folks and being in touch, each of you with your completers as they're engaged in the work that they do, how has that strengthened the program overall in general? Just curious about that.
That's a big question, Mark. I think, of course, we want to be changing always. We want to be evolving generally, and hopefully not just as a reaction to something like COVID, but actually in responding to what are we learning through all of what life throws at us. So one of the things that comes to my mind is that probably 8 or 9 years ago, again, we're down here in Southern Oregon. We cover a huge amount of property, land, people, even though it's perhaps more rural. There are so many people throughout Southern Oregon, from Eugene south, who do not have a university program, a teacher preparation program. And so when I think about program completers, well, we're not going to have any program completers if we can't find a way to reach out and create pathways. And I welcome our pathways person from our Oregon TSPC today on this webinar. But the state has really encouraged us to think about ways to do that, to reach out. We've had some wonderful grow your own grants that have come from the state. We've used that and our work in developing satellite programs to be able to find a way to make it work. So it's getting out there, it's talking to high school students, it's meeting with principals and talking about their educational assistants and their parapros and holding meetings with those people. It's finding a way to design a program so that it is not a traditional, well, class is at 9:30 in the morning. You got to be there in person. We have to figure out how we can utilize what we've learned through COVID, and also what ways that we can take a bigger arm reach around our community in Southern Oregon to bring more people in. And then, we've got the great ideas. Okay, we're going to have more hybrid, high flex, all of that. But then we have to figure out how to do it well, because we want our program completers to be well prepared. And so that's, I think, right now where my tension is. I have no I love reaching out. I love saying, come on, everybody. But then I have to figure out, how am I going to do what I do in person when I'm teaching via Zoom, or when I'm teaching hybrid or high flex.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's my big answer to your big question.
Thank you. Amy, anything you'd like to throw in on that theme? No? Okay. All right. Any other questions from our colleagues? And thank you, Karen, for both looking up GroupMe. One thing we've learned with Karen is if something is said in a meeting, chances are it'll show up in the chat 2 seconds later. So the GroupMe link is in there for any of you who wanted that, and also a link to Amy's book on strategic talent leadership for educators. So thanks for dropping that in as well. All right. Well, Christine, any last housekeeping comments?
Just that this recording, along with the slides, will be posted. So if you couldn't get down all the notes as our speakers were presenting, don't worry. You can go back to the recording or the slides. We will have our next member quarterly in February, but the topic is still TBD. So if you have some interests that you would like to hear explored by our wonderful membership, please email me. We are currently taking requests. So again, thank you so much to Amy and Susan for sharing the good work that you are doing. It was wonderful. It's always great. I feel like a little sponge sucking up all of the ideas that I can then hopefully share in our cohort calls coming up with other members, so we can keep the knowledge sharing alive. And thank you to all of our amazing members that are on the call today. Again, I extend my appreciation to the good work you are doing every day to prepare educators that we so desperately need, and doing such a fantastic job on it. So I'll be here, and Mark, I think, and Karen will hang on for a little bit if you have any other questions, but otherwise enjoy your day, and hope we'll see you in February for our next member quarterly.